What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown this weekend, December 6th, on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. PBC event. Lamont Roach Jr. is going to be facing Isaac Pitbull Cruz at 140. Okay, this is going to be for a WBC interim title up at 140. All right, and this is the main event of this card. Now, if you haven't seen already, I have already made two breakdowns for this weekend's card. I made a breakdown for Lara and Janovic, and I also made a breakdown for Foster against Fulton. Okay, so check those videos out if you haven't already. Before I get started with the breakdown, breaking news, all right, and this is like within the last hour. Janovic has tested positive for PED. We don't know any more details than that. Like I said, I already did a breakdown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what PED it is. We don't know if the fight is still going to happen. We don't know if he's going to get stripped. We don't know anything. There's no details, but it has been posted by the Ring Magazine Twitter account and Instagram account that Janovic did pop on a drug test. Okay, so I don't know if that fight is going to go down. Really disappointing news because basically, this was a unification match for 3 titles at the 160 division that's already been trashed as a division, but we finally got some sort of real unification, and this was Janovic's first real test, in my opinion. And now that he's popped, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the fight still goes on. Maybe the levels of whatever PED it is very low, but we'll see. All right. Now, as far as this fight, this is going to be a great fight. I mean, an action-packed fight. It has everything you need to be a good fight. I think the styles match up really, really well between Lamont Roach and Pitbull Cruz. We know that Pitbull comes with the same kind of style every single fight. Very aggressive, one of the most aggressive fighters out there. All right, heavy hitter. And he just comes straight forward. It's no real crazy technique in his game. He has that pickable style, just comes in. He's very short. He's shorter than everybody. Even compared to Tank when he fought him, extremely short, comes up under you, swings wild hooks and stuff. A lot of fire in his hands. And then you got Lamont Roach, who, you know, for the last few years, man, and leading up to the Tank fight, when you go back and watch it now, he's been fighting a more aggressive style, doesn't have a lot of knockouts in there. If you look at his records, 25 wins with only 10 KOs and 1 loss, 1 or 2 draws. You don't see a lot of KOs there, but if you look at his most recent performances, he's been more straight coming forward type of guy, standing his ground, while giving you all the fundamentals, the clean counterpunching, the clean defense, you know what I mean? Like, he's doing well. But even though he's been coming forward and being a lot more flat-footed, you can see that in the Tank fight, for example, you can see him pivoting. You can see him moving when he needs to. He doesn't over move. All right. He does it when it's necessary. And he has he's well rounded. But lately he's been more aggressive and he's been more durable. And this is why it makes for a good fight, because I think Lamont Roach, I don't know about for the whole fight, but I think a good period of this fight, I expect him to stand his ground and trade with Pitbull at some point of this fight. Would it be a mistake or not? I don't know. We just got to wait and see. But as a pretty good card, because this is a pretty good card, you got a lot of guys. You don't know if the Janovic fight with Lara is going to go down, but you still have the Force of Fulton fight. You got Mosley against Jesus, what's his name? Reyes. You have Frank Martin on a preliminary. So you got solid cards. A pay-per-view. I'm tired of pay-per-views, but at the end of the day, it is a solid pay-per-view card. These are good matchups. All right, but out of all the matchups, this is definitely most likely to be a war. Now, my opinion on this fight being at 140, this is not a WBA scrap, but this all started, and this has been a continuation of the WBA and their titles. Okay, I can't remember the full extent because I've talked about it so many times. But since Pitbull is involved with these guys from 135 moving up to 140, fighting for the WBA, and the WBA is now on the line. All right, this is a WBC interim title, but it started with these titles getting passed around. I believe it started with Rolly and Ismael Barroso. Rolly Romero beat Ismael Barroso, right? And basically he became full WBA champ at 140. Pitbull Cruz went up to 140 to challenge him, and he beat Rolly Romero, stopping Rolly Romero. All right. And then after that, Isaac Cruz eventually loses to Jose Valenzuela. All right. And he was outboxed by a really good fight. And Jose Valenzuela actually lost to Gary Anton Russell, who is a true 140. So that belt is at a true, like it's being held by a true 140 pounder, which is good, right? I like that. Not saying I want these guys to lose, but it's just been passed around. And the thing with Lamont Roach, he's from super featherweight. He's from 130, and I believe he still holds his title, the WBA title, down at 130. Now, when he went to fight Tank Davis, he moved up to fight Tank Davis, and it was a draw. It was a draw. I think he might have edged the fight, but to be honest, it was very close. I think the robbery. I don't think it was a robbery though. I think it was a close fight. I think the part that could have kind of made it a robbery was the knockdown. Even though there was a hair malfunction with Tank and all that, it was a legitimate knockdown because there was punches landed, which caused Tank to take a knee because his braid slapped into his eye, went to his corner, had a towel wiped off, all that. But look, the thing with these two, stylistically, it's great. And when I do these breakdowns, I do all my film study and all that. And be honest, man, there's never going to be a challenger on these resumes of any of these fighters that you're going to find that has a similar style as Pitbull Cruz. You're never going to find it. I'm looking at Lamont Roach fights. You're not going to find a Pitbull Cruz. The guy is 5'4", Lamont Roach is obviously taller. He has a longer reach. I mean, everybody's taller than Pitbull Cruz. Everybody that faces him. The only similar guy in these divisions that have like a similar height disadvantage is Nick Ball, and he's down at featherweight. You know what I mean? So if you haven't fought Nick Ball in these divisions, you're not going to find anyone that has the height of a Pitbull Cruz, and a style of a Pitbull Cruz. So when predicting these fights, you just got to go with who you think is going to be able to handle Pitbull's style, which is very difficult. Again, he comes in with that pickable style. He bends at the knees. He's throwing haymakers, Jabs are really just to set up the big punch that comes out after it. Very flat-footed, walks straight in, doesn't really pivot. Very flat-footed, at the end of the day. But he's very underrated defensively, counter punching, very quick hands, and a lot of power, and you have to deal with the pressure all night long. If you're able to fight off the back foot, then that's great. If you're able to be defensive while your back is against the ropes or in the corner, that's great. But if you can't, and if you're not that good at being slippery, and be able to time Pitbull and get out of there and turn him and spin him, then you're going to have a lot of problems. Now, Lamont Roach doesn't have the lightest feet, but I think he's shown that he can pivot and spin his opponents. I've seen it, and I think that's a huge key to winning this fight. I think that when it comes to fighting Pitbull Cruz, it's either two things. Offensively, I think you got to either time him when he's getting ready to set, like when he's setting to throw the punch. If you look at the Tank Davis fight, you would notice that Tank will throw the punch before Pitbull throws his. I think if you're one of those counter punchers that's waiting to counter after the punch, I think that's where you can put yourself in some sort of danger because he usually follows up with combinations. If you're a guy that is a little slippery like Valenzuela in that fight or Tank in that fight, I think you need to wait till he's setting himself up to throw, because once he's in range, he's most likely to throw. Yes, he lunges at times, and yes, you can counter based off that. But most of the time, you got to counter or punch before he sets himself when he's setting himself to throw a punch. I think the second thing you need to do is, if you have the ability to dunk underneath him and spin him and then counter, turn him and then punch with a combination. I think that's the other advantage, whether it's an uppercut, because Pitbull is at a high guard. So you hook around the guard, you uppercut through the guard. That's the key combination, whether you throw the hook and the uppercut or the uppercut and the hook. You know what I mean? Think that's the two key things you really need to do. You got to keep measuring him, measuring him, measuring. Keep that lead hand out, probe a little bit, and let him walk into a shot. But you have to throw it before he sets himself. Don't rely on countering off the first punch, because you don't know what's going to come behind that first punch that he throws. So those are the key things with him. Now, when it comes to Lamont Roach, I think he's more well balanced, right? He can do everything well. He does everything well. Plus, he's shown to be durable. The thing is, I've never seen him fight a whole fight off the back foot, and I think people are going to try to go to his like first loss against Jamel Herring. I watched the fight. I remember watching it live, and I rewatched it yesterday, and I was just picking through it real quick. And when a fighter is clearly better than what they were in previous losses, I don't really focus on it no more. Jamel Herring, different style, southpaw, rangy, and this was in his prime. This is when he was really, really on top of his game. Lamont Roach didn't see the same kind of confidence that he has now, the same aggression, the same defense, um, just just not better. I mean, he wasn't at near his peak. I think he's at his peak right now. And even though a lot of us, many of us, including myself, underestimated him for the Tank Davis fight, I can see that he's improved dramatically since then, even before, the Rene Alvarado fight, was the Hector Garcia fight. I can see in these fights that he's improved as a boxer overall, and he's strong, he's sturdy, he's durable. And I think when it comes to him, I'm hoping that he doesn't, I mean, for his sake, he doesn't overestimate himself coming off that Tank performance. I hope he's looking at this fight like, okay, that fight with Tank was my biggest fight in my career. That was my biggest moment in career, even though it came out being a draw. But at the same time, let's not come into this fight overconfident because, excuse me, because of how I performed in that fight. You know what I mean? And even though he's looked durable, he looked strong, he took a lot of punches from Tank in that fight. I'm hoping the dude doesn't come in this fight thinking, I heard the interviews, he said he's going to go for a stoppage. And believe me, like, I think if anybody is going to stop Pitbull out of the people that he's fought since Tank, I think Lamont has a best chance simply because I think he can display good defense on the inside. I think he could sit in the pocket a little better, and plus, let me just stick on Lamont Roach before I get to that point. I just think overall, I think he is a well-balanced guy, and I think you have to be durable, but you got to be slippery at the same time. I don't think he's going to be as slippery as a Jose Valenzuela or Tank Davis in their fights with Pitbull. But I think he has a right balance of being able to do some of that, but also being a dog and sit in the pocket and being in a phone booth fight type of thing, right? But displaying good defense, counter it with short shots. So I think he can do that. Pitbull, I think again, I don't have a way to beat him because Pitbull fights the same fight every fight. His speed, his power, his height is actually a huge advantage defensively, especially too, because he can get low underneath these guys and he tucks his chin and he hides his head. He does all of these things right to where he's not getting the full impact of his opponents, even when they throw the uppercuts, even when his chin is always tucked real good, when you hitting them with hooks around the guard, they're still getting like a piece of the glove. They're not getting a full impact of their punches. So, I think overall prediction time, what I think. I believe that Isaac Cruz was way more effective at 135. I think fighting up here has been tough for Fierro. Even though he stopped Rolly, when I look at the Fierro fight, the Salcido fight, clear win for him. But just not being able to stop these guys. The Valenzuela fight, where Valenzuela looked good, healthy, strong at that fight. Yeah, again he stopped Rolly, but I think that at a certain level, yeah, he stopped Yuriokis Gamboa and some of these guys Ramirez and yeah, he stopped some of these guys and all that, and it's cool. But at a different level, guys that's slippery, guys that's sturdy, durable, strong. I just don't think that. I think he could be handled. I think it's going to be a rough night, but I think these fighters can handle him, if he fights smart. And I think that, um, Pitbull would be stronger at 135. It's like comparing Valenzuela's fight against Gary Russell, who's a real 140 pressure, aggressive fighter versus a Pitbull who's much smaller. There's levels and there's limitations. And you saw that Gary Anton Russell was too much for Valenzuela, but even though Valenzuela had not too much of a rough night against Pitbull Cruz. There's just different levels when it comes to size and just aggression and pressure. And it just shows me that Cruz, even though he's good, going to crazy battles with Fierro, like that's his level. He's reached his peak. Whereas Lamont Roach, I still think there's a little bit more. I think he can handle a Cruz on the inside, and I think he can be a little slippery in there to outbox him. And this is why I have Lamont Roach winning this fight, because I just think he can do more and he can win in more ways than one. I think the safe pick is to go by a decision win. Because even though Lamont Roach has looked very impressive lately, I don't think he's some sort of monster. I don't want to go that far. I want to maybe base that off this win. But he is fighting at 140 now. And I'm curious to see how he does against Pitbull. But I am pretty confident that Lamont Roach wins. How? Will he get the knockout? Well, that'd be great. But if I seen some more of a chink in Pitbull's armor prior to this fight, I probably would have said, you know what, I think Lamont Roach can pull it off, the stoppage. But nah, I think I'm gonna just gonna roll with the decision win here, because I think he can do both. I think Lamont Roach, what he needs to do is start safe. Measure him, get the angles, get a little acclimated to how Isaac Cruz throws his punches, where they come from, and the speed. Get adjusted to that. And after 3, 4 rounds, then maybe come forward. But I think early, I think he should play it with distance early. Use that lead hand to measure him, counter him on his way in. Just throw his rhythm off a little bit, keep him off balance, tie up when you need to. But then when Pitbull begins to slow down, because he does slow down a little bit, that's when you start to become a little bit aggressive. If you're the first to really push him and force him to fight on the back foot, if we can see points where Roach can force him to fight on his back foot, that's when Pitbull is in some real trouble. All right. But anyway, I got Roach winning this one on points. All right. And again, I will be covering this entire card, including some of the preliminary fights this Saturday. So make sure you be here. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, share the video, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all the social medias, and I'll see you guys this Saturday. Y'all have a good one. Peace.